Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Matt, did you say before, I'm sorry, is the sanitary stuff what
We
Department
did
of
last-
Revenue put together based on feedback from the last meeting?
Yes.
So this is the new draft?
There's actually several in here. There's
Okay.
sanitary ID requirements, labeling, sampling, testing, and all that kind of thing.
And then now we're looking at?
Now we're going to look at actually the,
I think we should start with the memorandum of support. since
Okay.
they sent it back.
That's fine. Let's start with the memorandum.
Basis.
yes.
First off, I'd like to thank other members on the subcommittee we were working with, Joe Fogo, Bruce, Ryan, Norton, where's Jill? Just one somewhere. Brian, all of you. It was really, really very helpful, as well as the members of the small MNC groups that I was dealing with. They were extremely helpful in providing us with the basis for creating these proposed rules. Especially to Norton on memorandum of support. Norton drafted this, and it looks like it went through, if I'm reading this correctly.
We don't have copies of that.
Just
Well, it says memorandum of support.
Right, but I think
Pages.
all I'm saying is that I don't have
They
copies.
got stressed out down there.
Essentially, that was a definition of what constitutes a medical marijuana plant, with an emphasis on the medical and the medicinal aspects. And from there, we went on to create a set of rules that define what constitutes cultivation, what constitutes manufacture, distribution. We haven't tackled sale yet, we will get to that, but focusing on those and looking at the process of cultivation and manufacturing of the medical marijuana plant, and making it so that it is plant count throughout the manufacturing process. As soon as it reaches a finished good or inventory level, when it reaches, oh, Barbara, I forgot to mention you, thank you. As soon as it reaches a point at which it becomes a finished good for inventory purposes, then it becomes weight, and is immediately or within 24 hours is transported to the MNC, where it gets logged in as on-hand inventory. At that point, it is on-hand inventory, it is available for sale. Everything prior to that is work in process. Questions? I mean, that's the basic summary.
Just a few comments. There's a lot of information here, and I know that, and I can tell from reading that a lot of time, energy, and effort went into this, and I appreciate your thought processes. Just for the benefit of the committee, we're not going to move forward to approve these today because they were just distributed, but I would like you to spend some time, and perhaps at the next meeting, we can discuss it. But if I understand, Nick, then what really you're trying to do is reconcile the 6 plants and 2 ounces language in the statute, and that it's the proposal that while the plant is in the manufacturing stage, that it be accounted for as a plant, and once it's harvested, manicured, cured, packaged, or at least made into usable product, and it goes to the center, then it will be determined by finished weight when it becomes inventory.
Correct.
Okay. For the benefit of the work group. Okay. Do you want to go through your rules, if you would, Nick? Let's start with the first
If I
one.
could chime in very quickly, Matt, just to pull the camera back up a little bit and give everybody a little perspective about how we came about developing these rules. Following Matt's advice, first and foremost, always go back to the code, the Colorado Medical Marijuana Code, CRS 1243.3, and it gave us a real framework to start building these rules. When it says in particular that it's our job to propose a series of rules that regulate the cultivation, manufacture, distribution, and sale. And so that chronology really set the framework for us building the rules. So, first we have to find definitions. How do we define cultivation, manufacture, and distribution? Now, it gives us an easy template, if you will, but arriving at these definitions was no easy task. So if we want to look at cultivation, and that is page 2. So we define cultivation as, and again, everybody's going to have to go back and read these, and like Matt said, I'm sure the department is going to have some input so we can all get on the same page, but for the purposes of today's meeting, we went back to statutory definitions and also to a plain reading of the statute. So cultivation for our purposes includes but is not limited to the process of germination, propagation, vegetation, flowering, and harvesting of the medical marijuana plant. And so, by nature of this definition, it leads into the next area of regulatory attention, which in this case is the manufacturer. So, tailoring these definitions so that they can sit in and of themselves. By that I mean that perhaps the same security requirements that we use in the cultivation process are going to be slightly different for manufacturing and be slightly different for distribution. In the case of manufacturing, the definition of manufacturing is taking a raw product. Yes, sir.
No, and if I may, before we move to the next step, just going back to the cultivation piece, it's your intent or the work group's recommendation and subgroup's recommendation that this rule, as it relates to cultivation, just deal with the relationship between a center and its optional premise cultivation license?
That's correct.
I'm wondering if at least subsections 1 through 1C would not be generic enough to pertain to the entire industry.
And perhaps they would, but one little caveat to that is obviously the optional premises that are related to the MMP have a different sort of statutory framework. But as far as the definition of cultivation, bringing the plant to flower, a lot of that could be used for the MMIP. We chose to have a subset of rules that deal with the MMC and optional premise relationship. Since it is bifurcated in the statute, we figured that it would be, for purposes of convenience, it would be easier to bifurcate it in terms of rule.
I agree, yeah. I guess I point that out and believe the relevant sections are subparagraph 1 through 1C as drafted in your proposal here. And I would just ask the MIPS group to really take a look at this between now and the next meeting, specifically subsections 1 through 1C, and see if it universally could fit and may be able to use the definition of cultivation broad-based throughout the entire industry.
Fortunately, Ray was in our group as well, so he'll be able to work with the next group and share that kind of information.
And Brian.
And Bob.
Or Brian.
Or Brian.
Okay. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And so, just in reading these rules, when you go back and study them and offer your recommendations, the point to really take away and to hammer home is that using these different rubrics that 1284 have given us is not only the most statutorily true way to come about these rules, but also one that is responsive to the practical realities of commercial medical cannabis manufacturing, and one that serves also the regulatory purposes of accountability and a real accounting of the plants and what sort of production levels we're actually getting to, so that the department will have good data points in the future in terms of regulation.
I think the key element here is that we are going to blend the reality of what happens as far as cultivation is concerned with the reality of the need for regulation.
Okay. Barb?
I just wanted to add one more thing to what Norton said. A third piece that we tried to factor in was the idea that because it's a new industry and because there's a lot of conversation about intellectual property, different ways in which to grow, to allow the industry to allow individuals to grow and produce the way that they know how, and yet be able to kind of correlate that with the data set that the Department of Revenue needs. So that I think especially as the public kind of hears these and asks questions and tries to understand how we set up this overall accounting procedure. It's really with the intent to bridge both what the industry needs and what the Department of Revenue needs.
I appreciate that.